Okay, it's a video for the Fat Freq Maestro Mini. You don't want to look at my knuckles this whole video, so let's put up with the glove. That's why I wear it. There we go. Okay, left hand covered. This is a set that is directed at people who like something like the Empire Ears Legend X. Overall, good sound quality with a very, very, very big and strong emphasis in the bass. I'll get to that when I start to do the review. Before we do that, let's take a look at the case itself. It's got plenty of room. You could put another cable inside here. The one Timmy had a 4.4 behind a 3.5 cable, so it's got plenty of room. Absorb moisture gel. Let's take it out. The shells are actually quite beautiful. You can see the blue. It's got kind of like a blue marbled. It's got the Fat Freq logo on it. And then you can see the clear hooks on it. This cable is decent. I think I'm going to make a suggestion to the company right now. I think they're in Singapore, so they're probably familiar with Critical. Crin's latest collaboration, the sound notes, or not the sound notes, the, what is that called? The Truth Ear Zero came with a cable that if you, I'm sure you guys recognize. This looks kind of like what 64 Audio used to use, or they might still use something like that today. This is much easier to manage. It's easier to roll up and to take out, and also the ear hook style with that like heat shrink heated onto the end as opposed to this. This is probably a better cable. You guys might want to check that out. Just a suggestion. Part of my job, I think, as a reviewer is to give feedback to the company. This is all about the sound, and we'll talk about that, but that cable could probably, for no extra money, be probably improved to that one. Now, let's go ahead and move to the frequency graph slowly without making you feel sick. And there is a massive bass. It is sub-bass focused. It comes down, corrects itself relative to the mids, pretty much around 300 hertz, not exactly, but it's not impacting much beyond that as far as lifting up male vocals, impacting drums, blowing out bass guitar. None of that really happens because it doesn't have, let me see if I can get this mouse over here. It's Empire Ears Legend X, and you can see that it's got about the same sub bass, and the mid bass, it's got a little bit more mid bass, and elevated mid bass is where you can get some of the blowout when it comes to a 4-string or 5-string bass guitar. Maybe a little bit overemphasis on drums, a little bit of husking on male vocals. Actually, for a set that is as enormous in the bass as the Maestro Mini, it doesn't really seem to tweak bass guitars, 4 or 5-string, drum kits, or male vocals really that much. That Legend X obviously does. The Maestro Mini actually doesn't really. So, and if we take a look at the treble, the Legend X is a little more forward in the upper mids. This has got a little bit more energy. They're not really, one is not tremendously better than the other. I think the Empire Ears Legend X has more drivers. It's got the crossovers. It's probably a more technically proficient set. I'll get to that later. But if you like, this is like a Sony M3 AP on very, very good steroids. It slams super hard. It's got a kind of smooth replay, even though that treble would indicate maybe some roughness, and also the BA in the nozzle. It's actually not the case. It sounds quite good, and I'll talk about that when I talk about music. So let me slowly turn here as to not make you sick again. And let's take a look at that just for a second one more time. This is a set that cost, I think, $400. I would absolutely wreck it just because of the fact that this actually vibrates in your ear. And I'll talk about some tracks that do that, and I'll be specific with it. So that's the intro portion of it. Fantastic looking set. Build quality is great. Cable is good. I would wreck the Truth Ear cable. Get sourced by them. I'm sure that's just a phone call away to Crin and they hook them up. It seems like a better cable, and for something that's this excellent, I think it probably deserves a better cable in my opinion. And let's go ahead and start talking about some music. Okay, let's talk about bass. If you're into EDM or trip hop or hip hop library, this is probably the best set that you can get for your money, or maybe period. It literally vibrates in your ear. Let me be specific. A track, Eazy-E, Straight Off the Streets. It's called Sippin' on a 40, featuring BG Knockout and Dresta. You can feel that vibration in your ear. E40, I've only got one track in here. It's called Candy Paint. I believe this is one with Bun B. You can feel it vibrating in your ear. There's another one called Cadillac Dawn by Cadillac Dawn and J Money, Peanut Butter and Jelly. You might want to check out this track if you've never heard it before. This will vibrate in your ear. Other stuff that I listen to, like Tupac, Violent, same thing. Now let me get to some stuff I regularly talk about. The drop on Big Boy Kill Jill, there's a triple drop. The lowest one is around 38 hertz. I've checked it with a spectrogram, and then it's got around 60 and then around 70. So it's got a triple drop that's dropping well into the sub bass, right around the sub bass crossover, then a little bit above that. Then a 4-string bass guitar comes in. When you elevate the bass too much, you can get what's a blowout of the bass guitar, which makes it sound very unnatural, extends the tones, the fundamental portions, and it sounds quite odd. It's the opposite of what Variations does when you cut the mid bass. When you put in too much mid bass, it can create a problem. This set actually is tuned quite brilliantly. They're crossing it over where it comes into the mids at a point where it doesn't really impact something like Big Boy Kill Jill when you wait for the bass guitar to come in, because this is a great track because of the drops from the deck, and then you've got the bass guitar. Sometimes one sounds good and the other doesn't, or they both sound good. In this case, both of these actually sound good. So the elevation is not so much that it impacts the quality of bass guitar. The next track plays that out as well. Black Sabbath, Masters of Reality. We've got a drummer, classic rock band drummer, and a bassist that are going on at the same time, kind of doing a mini solo. It's very easy for a sense of kind of masking to occur where one is overtaking the other. They're going on at the same time and their instruments are in the same area on the frequency response graph. You're doing that part of that with a single driver a lot of the time. It's a hard task for a dynamic driver. This set actually does pretty good, and it doesn't blow out the drums or the bass guitar. So I enjoyed the replay of this. It's just very energetic. It's like being closer to the amps or the instruments, the bass guitar and the drummer, and not as close to the vocalist. So it's not destroying the replay, but there's a definite emphasis on the drums and the bass guitar. So I thought that this actually played back quite good. And all of the hip hop and EDM stuff sound absolutely insane. Check out that Cadillac Dawn track because it's kind of crazy. Okay, let's talk about the mids. We're looking at Elton John's discography right here. It's a singer with a piano a lot of the time, so it's good for focusing on the mids. The piano covers the entire frequency response range. The harmonics and the fundamentals go all the way down to where the human ear can hear, and all the way to the limits of what you can hear in the upper range. So it's a great instrument. This set is great at bass. Mids are not its strong point, but it's not a handicap either. There's other sets that have just a little bit too much mid bass and kill it. This actually doesn't do that. Going through stuff I talk about regularly, Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, 2 male, 2 female singers, sounds good. Sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. The bass guitar, dun 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 dun. The chain, there's certain tracks where just the bass really steps out a little bit too much. It's not really impacting vocals as much as one might think. Again, the tuning that they did is quite impressive. They did make a king of bass, but they didn't kill everything that follows, which is kind of hard to do. They did it better than Empires, in my opinion. So Fleetwood Mac sounds good. It's not one of the better replays that I've heard. Listening to Heart, Dreamboat Annie, 3 tracks on this album I listened to. The first 3, in fact, Magic Man, Dreamboat Annie, Fantasy Child, and Crazy on You. The bass comes in a little bit too hard, but if you like that live at the show vibe, this is kind of what you're getting when you listen to a set like this. So that sounds great, plus the low-end energy without blowing out the vocals. I thought it sounds pretty good. There's not a problem there. There's another one I want to talk about really quick. Of course, the kick drum for the 4th album of Led Zeppelin sounded vicious like it's supposed to do. Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, a male and female singer in Paradise by the Dashboard Light who are well trained and have a fantastic vocal range going on throughout. They're talk singing. They're literally talking. They're almost yelling. There's the vocal range on this track is amazing. I thought it sounded great. The low end emphasis gives it a lot of lively sound. This might be a recording that was based on a live performance and then it was produced a little bit. I'm not sure. There's a video online and that's a live performance. It feels kind of like being there. Again, not the most ideal mids. A little bit less mid bass would probably be the way to go. If you're vocal centric, this wouldn't be the set to get. If you like vocals to be good, you don't mind them lifted just a little husk on male vocals, and you want that slam, this would be a set to get. So mids are not top notch, but they're not bad either, and considering what they did with the bass, it's actually quite impressive. So that's the mids. Okay, let's talk about treble. Vivaldi, Tchaikovsky, either one could be in here. I'm talking about strings mostly. The Concerto No. 1 in E major. The strings in this are quite intense. They can be fatiguing. They can actually lead to ringing in the ear. This set has BAs in the nozzle and is tuned up in the upper mids and treble to kind of compensate for the enormous amount of bass so that you can hear it clearly. I think they actually did a pretty good job. Not a fan of BAs in the nozzle, but it's not really creating a problem. I got a ringing from the ST5 and other stuff, but I didn't get a ringing listening to a lot of violins and strings in general on Vivaldi. Concerto No. 1 in E major, to be specific. I also listened to some Tchaikovsky and some Verdi. I wasn't having any problems, so in that sense it sounded good. Not the most precise treble presentation, but it wasn't ripping my face off with poorly tuned treble. I thought actually it sounded pretty good. Listening to cymbal strikes, which are repeated and are done and produced very well, would be off Led Zeppelin's Coda. It's the final track, and it's a bonus track called Hey Hey What Can I Do? Bonham is repeatedly striking the cymbals in a way that is predictable, and it happens throughout. He's basically part of his timekeeping on that track. And it's the birth, life, and death of the cymbals sounds great. It's got a little bit of extra energy. It's not tizzy, which would make me get ringing in my ears, but it's notable that it's got a little bit of that. You can either have an abrupt cymbal, and you know that's not what it's supposed to sound like, or you can have a, and it sounds a little bit unnatural. Again, if there's no info there, you're not going to hear it, but it is notable that there seems to be a long tail on Hey Hey What Can I Do? Not a problem at all. Obvious that the treble is kind of tuned up just a little bit. Listening to some live stuff. One more from the road, which is the live Freebird. Little Feat, Dixie Chicken, which has got pianos and saxophones, and it's got all kinds of instruments, and I thought it sounded good. When we get to live performances, because when you go to a live show, you can feel the music coming through you, whether it's an orchestra or it's a live rock band or it's a hip-hop show, that energy kind of travels through you, especially if you go to something like a half shell, which is what orchestras use. So that's really benefiting the whole I'm at a live show. If the U2 live album, it does the same thing. On the Lynyrd Skynyrd, it does the same thing. On Frampton Comes Alive by Peter Frampton, on all live rips, vinyl rips, the low end emphasis with the decent treble is giving back kind of being at the show presentation. And if I'm not mistaken, this company maybe makes some stuff for musicians. And if that's the case, this kind of all makes sense. If you're monitoring and you're listening for your own drums or your bass guitar, I can totally get that this would actually be okay because you're listening to yourself. I don't think it'd be fatiguing really, depending on the volume that you listen at. If you're a vocal monitor, I don't know if the Maestro Mini would be the set, but they probably have another one in their collection. And if you monitor drums or other stuff, I guess it would be case by case. They might have others in there, but if you listen to the group overall, so you're monitoring the whole group plus yourself, I think it would be fine. If you're monitoring your bass guitar or you're a drummer, I think these would be excellent actually, and I really think that this company is making stuff for musicians as well. this gives back the live show replay. I'm a music lover, and I consider reference to be front stage seats, 15th row, middle. That's what it was in car audio. That's what it should be. You should feel like the vocalist is in front of you, not behind you or around you. You should feel like maybe the bassist is in your front left, the guitarist is moving around but starting on the right. There's kind of a mental image of a live show, and I like to get that because a lot of produced albums or CDs present it to me in the same way. If I switch to left channel, right channel, I'm getting more of the bassist on the left side, more of the guitar on the right, and then it starts to pan depending on how they produced it. So this is a set that's really good for listening to live stuff. You gotta love bass. I think they made an excellent set. Don't feel bad about what I said about the cable. I want companies to get better whenever they can. People roll cables anyway. I think the cable could be improved. That's really all I got. Excellent set, highly recommended. Bass lovers set, rock and roll lovers set, hip hop, EDM, trip hop lovers set. People that like to sound like they're at a live show. If you've listened to recs that I've given before and you wanted to get that tactile sensation like an ASG 2.5 gives you without giving up everything, because that's what you're going to give up with our sonic set that's bass tuned up, or you don't want an EX800 and then tape it and it fits weird because it's like a bolt in your ear, this will give you all of the benefits of a bassy set and more than that. It's really good. I appreciate it. Thank you to Fat Frequency for setting. Didn't impact my review at all. I think the bass is fantastic. I think the mids are decent, being impacted by the bass. I think the treble is good, considering how much bass is behind it. Overall resolution is decent, competitive in its price range. Switch the cable out. People roll cables anyway, and you got a winner. You already got a winner. I just switched the cable myself personally. And that's it. Maestro Mini by Fat Frequency. Thank you very much. And I'm out. Oh, I'm not out. Let me put this back in there. I totally forgot. Giz Audio. There'll be a link below to him. If you saw my scale, you know that I got that from him. I sent him a mail and said, is it cool if I grab that? And he said, everybody takes a little bit off. It's kind of paying homage, and when a great idea comes out, people harvest it. It's the hobby. So thanks for being cool. Link to his channel will be below. I got to add that. And I'm out.